Greetings, dear lurkers, listeners, watchers, and readers. Welcome to Horror Hideout. My name's Michael Whitehouse, but you can call me Mike. And this episode of Horror Hideout is a prelude to what the podcast is going to be. This is episode 0. And in this episode, I'm going to discuss and describe what the podcast is about, a few other updates about what's been going on with my own work and the work of the Ghastly Tales team, and maybe a couple other things. I may go on tangents. For the most part, Horror Hideout is going to be unscripted. I'm not going to be reading really from a long list of things, of talking points. I've got a couple of little things written down in front of me here, but for the most part, I'm winging it, and I think that's hopefully going to be part of the charm. I hope you guys enjoy it. Now, I hope that there's not going to be an annoyance about this new podcast, because it is primarily going to be a perk for Patreon subscribers and donators. So if you don't know what Patreon is, it's a site which allows people to support artists involved in different creative endeavours, to throw them $1 or $2 here or there, either as a way of a sort of glorified tip jar, I suppose, or to support their work so that they can take the time to then make more of what they do. So that's what Patreon is. I don't want the channel to become one of these places where we're constantly talking about this and ramming it down people's throats. I don't want the podcast, the Ghastly Tales podcast, to be that either. Although I do leave a little mention of the Patreon account at the end of each video, and I hope that doesn't annoy people too much. The main reason for using Patreon is that I work as a freelance writer. I'm a full-time writer. It's a precarious livelihood in a lot of ways. I'm very lucky to have worked over several years to get myself to the point where I can survive. I can live I can generate a full-time income doing freelance writing, but it does take up the majority of my time, and that's problematic because excuse me, I think if I were working, say, a normal 9-to-5 job, I think I would then perhaps have more energy to write my own project. But because I am already writing all day, to actually get a lot of time to write my own stuff is difficult, because I'm always chasing deadlines as a freelance writer. I'm always trying to fit as much into my day as possible. I'm always chasing these things. That's the life of a freelance writer. But when I sit down and I want to write something of my own, the tank is often empty because I've been writing all day already, you know. I mean, and the days change. Sometimes I'm working for 8 hours, but, you know, I've pulled 10, 12, 15-hour writing days before, and really at the end of that, there's nothing left to give. You've used all of your creative energy, and you've used it essentially on other people's projects and not really your own. I don't want to whine about it. I feel very lucky to be in a situation where I can work full-time as a writer. But the idea of the Patreon is that, I mean, first of all, there are costs to running Ghastly Tales. There's hosting costs for the podcast, for the website, for producing some of the audio content as well. And that's, so it's kind of, it'll help with that, but more so, the Patreon hopefully will allow me to say, right, okay, so I've raised this amount of money on Patreon for a month, means I can take a little bit time, you know, maybe not take on that extra piece of work as a freelance writer. Now I have a few hours within my working day, or an hour within my working day, or 2 hours within my working day, for a few days to work on my own projects. So that's excuse me, I'm going to be clearing my throat an awful lot. I do apologise. I've got a frog in my throat. Not literally, I don't eat frogs, but I hear they're delicious. In any case, that's what the Patreon account's for. If you love listening to, or enjoy listening to the stuff that I put out, or you love or you enjoy reading the stuff that I write, then that's what the Patreon account is there to kind of support. Now, don't worry about it. If we never raised a penny on Patreon, this is a passion project for me. Ghastly Tales, the horror genre, writing, horror fiction, these are all things that I'm really, really passionate about. So no matter what, if no one was listening, we're lucky to have an audience now. There's 11,000, nearly 12,000 people on the YouTube channel. The Ghastly Tales podcast has generated thousands of new listeners for us as well, and you know, and there are plenty of people reading my stuff online as well. So I'm really lucky to be in that situation. But if no one was listening and no one was reading and no one was watching, I'd still be doing this. It might not be as gratifying, but I would still be doing it because I love the horror genre and I love creating things. I've been writing since I was about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. I have little books that I wrote at that age, and things that I've written ever since. I used to take an A4 sheet of paper and half the A4 sheets over, and my mum would staple them in the middle like a book spine, and I would draw the cover and write the title of the book and write a wee blurb in the back and then write inside the book. And it's just something that's always been a part of me. So I would still be doing this even if no one was listening and all I was doing was howling at the moon, you know. So even if the Patreon doesn't raise any money at all, it's okay. That's all right. You know, I will continue doing this. It just means that there will be less time for it, unfortunately. But I will still continue doing it. So I'm not begging. I'm not expecting people to. And I certainly wouldn't want anyone who's to put themselves into any sort of financial difficulty for ourselves, for essentially what's entertainment for you guys and gals. I say guys and think that it covers all genders. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Probably wrong about that. Everyone. I'll use the word everyone from now on. So yeah, like it doesn't. If I wouldn't want anyone to put themselves into any sort of difficulty, basically. Just for myself or for the rest of the Ghastly Tales team and the work that we do. So yeah, that's what the Patreon's for. If you're interested in going there, you can. It's patreon.com/Michael Whitehouse. I'm not going to make video after video about this, so don't worry, I'm not going to prattle on about it. You'll notice that at the end of Ghastly Tales episodes, and very occasionally at the beginning, I might have a brief mention about it, just to let people know that it's there. But I don't want to be one of these channels where we're constantly begging for money. We don't need the money to still continue to do things. It's just there to help us do more, basically. So I've prattled on enough about that, I think. Oh yeah, I would also like to say as well, the people who do already contribute to the Patreon, I just want to thank them. There have been some people. I've had my writing Patreon going for some time, and now it's kind of doubling as my writing Patreon, and also the Patreon for people who love, or I keep saying love, maybe you don't love it, but for people who enjoy Ghastly Tales stuff. Excuse me, where have I put my water? Where have I put my... There we go. So I'd just like to thank the people that have been using Patreon for some time to support either my writing or Ghastly Tales. It's really lovely that people would think that it's worth throwing a few dollars at just to try and help us produce more content. So a big thank you to everyone so far. I'm thinking of starting to do videos maybe where I actually mention who these people are, if they will allow me, and thank them personally. But anyway, don't worry, I'm not going to reveal your your names without asking you. So that's Patreon. This is what Horror Hideout is. On Patreon you get different tiers, so you could do a $1 contribution, for example. And for that, you'll get early access to written works, exclusive access to some written works that I haven't released anywhere else. You'll get high quality versions of all of the audio content, way higher quality than you get on the podcast itself. I mean, by higher quality, I mean just at a higher bit rate. So so you get these sorts of perks, and then the tiers go up. So at $3, that's where the Horror Hideout podcast is going to be. I might change it and make Horror Hideout a perk for everyone on Patreon, actually, but I'll decide that after I finish recording this. So in any case, that's kind of how it works. There are various perks that you can get for contributing. Anyway, enough of that. I prattled on about Patreon for 10 minutes. Said I wasn't going to be one of these people who's like going on about, please give us money. Yeah, again, we'll be fine. Don't worry about us. And don't worry about me. It's just well, you know what it's for. I've already told you. So sorry. Right, okay. So this is what the Horror Hideout podcast is going to be. So you might not see it on the Ghastly Tales podcast, or you might not see it on the YouTube channel. You will definitely see it on Patreon. Maybe I'll do a timed release at some point. Maybe like 6 months later I'll release an episode that's already went up or something like that to everyone else. I'm not so sure about that yet. So I'm still ironing out the wrinkles of doing this sort of thing. What else? Yeah, so a big thank you to everyone that's already contributed. Moving on to the Ghastly Tales channel, you'll notice, and with my writing as well, if you've been following what we've been doing, you'll notice that we've not been doing a lot over the last year. Like we've not produced a lot. Well, we've still produced videos, a short film by the numbers, which Martin and Callum did, and I've produced a number of audio stories and a few written stories, but the output's definitely been reduced. And the reason it's been reduced is that everyone in the Ghastly Tales team has kind of been at a little bit of a crossroads in their lives. Callum was changing his career, Martin was buying a house, I became a father for the first time, Alan is he's got stuff on his plate as well that he's been dealing with, and Mick is the same as well, and I know he's been sort of changing some of the things that he's been doing. So we've all sort of as a team been doing different things, and that's really led us to this sort of lull where we've not been producing as much stuff. We're back at it now, incidentally. Excuse me, you're going to hear me drinking water, if that's okay. This is not ASMR, everyone. I'm not doing that sort of stuff. So that's why there's been a bit of a lull on the channel. But we've not stopped. We've never stopped. We've still been releasing stuff, and we've still been working away on things. It's just been, like I say, not been a lot of time for things, as much time as there was previously. So what we've been working on at the moment in terms of the channel, we have a ton of scripts written for a few documentaries and some short film projects. So the writing aspect of it has kind of still been going along fine. It's the filming time of it has been a little bit more difficult to get everyone together to do that. But we do have plans now to try and get some new projects. Callum and Martin have already shot a mini documentary, which is in line with the Ghastly Tales of Scotland stuff that they did before. No, the Ghastly Tales of Scotland videos are probably our most popular videos, so I know a lot of people will be looking forward to that. So they've already shot a lot of that. It's really, they're sort of editing and putting it together and seeing if they need anything else. It's not a full episode of the Ghastly Tales of Scotland. It's a new kind of thing that Martin and Cam have been working on, but it's along those lines. I don't want to give it away. It's up to them to let everyone know about what it is and announce it. I've been working away still on a couple of book projects, and so the channel in general, we're back uploading regular content. It's at the moment it's kind of either a video a week or an audio piece of audio content a week, or it's like maybe every 2 weeks, maybe at the most. But we've still been managing to do that, and it's been really gratifying to be back in at it and to read everyone's comments. It's been really lovely. So another aspect, and by the way, I should say, it's been a while since I've been doing vlogs and podcasts and stuff like that where I'm speaking off the cuff. You'll hear me doing a lot of ums and ehs. The more I do this, I'll get back to not doing that so much, but please do bear with me. So I do apologise for that. Yeah, so back to the channel. One thing that's going to be introduced to the channel, which is going to be a little bit different, is that I've had a YouTube channel for a long time called Horror of Mike. I don't really get to do much for it now, but for a time, for a few years, it was one of my main interests on YouTube. I did a lot of horror reviews and things like that, books, films. Some of those videos, not videos from that channel, but new videos about horror books that I've been reading and films, TV series, that sort of thing. There are going to be new videos about that sort of thing, and you're going to get retrospectives. So for example, I'm working on a retrospective on a TV show called Erie, Indiana, and also another TV show called The Night Gallery. So they'll be kind of like documentaries that will appear on the channel as well. We've also got well, I don't want to give away everything, and I do want to rein myself in a little bit, because I've been known in the past to announce things and then it takes a while for them to come to fruition. So I need to rein it in a little bit and just tell you about the stuff that's pretty much ready to go. So as for my writing, I'm still working away on that. The next project that's going to come out, so there's two things. The first is that there are going to be some new no sleep stories that I've already written a few of them. They're going to be released. Bear in mind that No Sleep Stories, if you're not aware, it's a subreddit, almost like a kind of forum on the Reddit website, where people post stories that are presented as being real. So often that's in first person, and it's in a conversational, literary style. It's not in the style that I would usually write. So it's kind of it's got a sort of urban legend, being told a story during a power cut sort of feel to it, rather than the style of writing that I've kind of become more known for, which is a lot more descriptive. So this is like really, really cut back, but I enjoy writing like that as well every now and then, just to test myself to see if I can be more concise. And that's what those No Sleep Stories are going to be. So I've already written a couple of them. There'll be more on the way. And the next, did I already say that? The next book project is, I released a book a while ago called The Face of Fear and Other Stories. So there's going to be a paperback version of that that'll be released. That's hopefully going to be relatively soon as well. So that takes me to the end of my very, very short list. Couple of things I wrote down in front of me, just to remember what I was going to say, and that's really it. Can you tell this is I'm just making this up as I go along? Can you tell? I think you can by the number of ums and ahs. I'd also like to take some questions, anything like that people are thinking of for the next episode. Things that you want to be answered and stuff like that, although I will probably do a separate Q&A video sooner rather than later as well, but just maybe topics that you'd like me to discuss. And I do promise you that as these episodes go, and as I return back to doing podcasts, conversational podcasts on top of the fiction, and vlogs as well, that the rust will be shaken from my boots. I think this is one of the things about being a full-time writer, is that you spend an awful lot of time on your own. I used to consider myself to be a relatively well socialized person, at least I hoped. I was always a bit odd. I'm not going to lie about that. I was always a little bit odd, a little bit on the periphery sometimes, but I've always felt that if I got engaged into a conversation with someone, I could always have it, and I could always adapt to that conversation and not really have a problem. But what I have noticed in the last few years is that because of the inordinate amount of time that I'm spending by myself, that it's almost like a muscle. You lose that ability to converse with people. And although this isn't maybe so much a conversation, still I can feel that there's a slowness to the way I speak. I can feel that there's a difficulty sometimes in attaching ideas that come into my head into coherent sentences. And that's an interesting thing to me. I've noticed that recently when I've sort of pushed myself to get out of the house and go and spend some time with friends, and found myself watching and listening to people a lot more than speaking. And that's obviously, that's a good thing. You should listen to the people around you and what's going on. But the ability to then converse in an effective way, kind of, I've definitely lost that aspect to myself a little bit. And I think hopefully I'm trying to push myself now to say, like, right, enough's enough. Don't get so wrapped up in your bubble of like sitting in front of a computer all day writing. You need to push yourself to actually go and spend time with the people that you love, first of all. I mean, that sounds like it's a chore. It's not at all. I mean, I see my wife and my daughter every day, and we spend loads of time together, and I see my mum and dad, and I'm not talking about those sorts of connections. I'm talking about going and spending time with friends, and also putting yourself into situations maybe where you're meeting new people. Those are two things that I have not been doing enough of the last few years, and I think it's been to my detriment. Everyone can get wrapped up in their own existence and feel that there's a comfort to isolation and to a solitary life in some ways. And I certainly feel that. There are plenty of times where it's like, right, could I go out and do this or that? Or could I just stay in and read a book? Or watch a film? Or write? Whatever it is. Could I just, more often than not, waste my time doing something? And I'm not saying that those things are a waste of time, but certainly there's times where it's like, well, I could be doing something productive, like reading a book or watching a film that's going to enrich my life somehow, or mentally tax me in some way. And instead, I look at the clock and I've been, staring blank-faced at a phone for 2 hours reading Reddit posts about funny cats. Like it's so easy to find yourself in that trap. And there is a comfort in it as well, I think, in the isolation, because it's controllable. You kind of control everything in your existence, at least for that time that you're spending on your own. There's no one to disagree with you, apart from yourself. I disagree with myself on a regular basis, but there's no one there to externally disagree with you. There's no one there to maybe tell you what to do or make demands of your time or anything like that. You're kind of completely in control, and that's an exhilarating thing in many ways. But like anything in life, you must have a balance. You have to be able to balance that solitary existence, the isolation, and using that isolation in a positive way to better yourself by learning new things and developing skills. But you have to balance that with knowing that socializing for the most part is a really healthy thing. It enriches your life also in a different way. Perhaps maybe in a more meaningful way, actually, if you're spending time with friends, absolutely, and even meeting strangers, it can enrich your life, new perspectives, new ideas, sort of flowing into your mind. And I think, especially as a writer, that if you cut yourself off from the world, which I think I have done over the last few years, I've sort of cut myself off in some ways, and I don't know if that was meant or if it just accidentally happened. I don't know, but I certainly have done it, and that isolation has led to, I think, a dulling of my senses, a dulling of certainly my physical health. I have some physical problems that I suffer from chronic migraine, and definitely overweight, things like that, things that I'm trying now to rectify. But you certainly, if you're sitting down too much, you're not getting moving, you're not changing your environment, just your sense of well-being and your physical health and your mental health, which are all connected in a lot of ways, it really deteriorates in a lot of ways. Excuse me as I take another slug of water. So that's something that I'm trying to work on, is to push myself now to be a little bit more outward in my perspective. And I think this podcast is kind of a step in that direction as well. Being able to verbalize my thoughts is something that really helps me. And I'm not saying that if you're listening to this and you're someone who perhaps lives alone, you don't enjoy the company of friends, you don't spend a lot of time with family, that what you love out of life is spending time on your own and doing your own thing, more power to you. I think for most people there has to be some balance. You can be a solitary person in a lot of ways, where you're spending 98% of your time on your own doing your own thing, but you still need that little 2%. It's healthy, it's good for you. And if you spend so much time on your own, this is my experience of it anyway, you sort of give yourself excuses not to go and do social things and not to go and experience other aspects of life that perhaps you used to. Because again, it's the control factor. You're in complete control of your environment, of everything around you. Everything's safe and known. If you go to a party, for example, there's going to be people there you don't know, and that's different, isn't it? That's different to just sitting with your own thoughts, or writing, or reading, or and I don't want it to sound like I'm a hermit, although I think if I didn't have my family, and I've got great friends as well who I consider to be part of my family, but I certainly think that if I didn't have my direct family, like my wife and my daughter, I think I would be a very, an extremely solitary person. But there's an isolation in that as well, because they become an extension of you in some ways, rather than it's a different thing. It's wonderful spending time with them. I love them both dearly, but it's a different thing to pushing yourself to get out of the house. I mean, I think part of the problem as well is that as a writer, I spend most of my time indoors and in the house, and then I finish. So I get up in the morning, I maybe look after my daughter, and then my daughter, we're lucky enough that my mother-in-law looks after her when I'm working and when my wife's working. She does that 2 days a week, and then there's a third day that I take off, and so my wife works those 3 days, and so I look after the little one 1 day. My mother-in-law looks after the little one the other 2 days, and then the other 4 days of the week my wife's off. But even on those days, I thought the computer had switched off there. I was about to panic. Even in those days, you're not you're sort of jumping straight from working in the house, maybe getting up. I get up early with the little one, then, or my wife does, one of us does, and then you're both working, and I'm working in the house, and then, but even on the days when my wife's off, you're working, and then you finish, and then you're looking after your wee one, and you're just spending all your time kind of indoors, except when you maybe take the wee one out somewhere. But yeah, so I didn't really mean to get into this tangent of existential crises and my daily existence, but that's sort of part of what this podcast is going to be for me. Is I've always been online, I've always been very open about the way that I feel about things and my experiences in life. And one of the reasons I've done that is in the hope that maybe even if there's one person that hears that they will that it will help them, you know. I remember making vlogs on an old YouTube channel years and years ago, probably best part of 10 years now, and I made some very, very frank videos about anxiety and depression, and also for a little while I thought I had a heart condition which was being looked into, and I made it turned out to be something quite benign, but I do have an irregular heartbeat, and it was a frightening time for me when we didn't know if it was something really bad or something benign, and it took a long time for them to figure it out. But I made videos about that through that time, and I received a lot of comments from people who were quite grateful that I'd made those videos, even though originally I didn't think anyone would watch them. I just did them to sort of vent in a lot of ways, but then knowing that they actually helped people who were going through similar things, that was a great thing. That was a great thing. Gives you a little bit of purpose to what you're doing. You're, as I say, you're not just howling at the moon, which sometimes when you're a writer, or if you are doing vlogs or whatever sort of creative endeavor you're working in, it can or taking part in, it can definitely feel like you're howling at the moon and that there's no purpose to what you're doing, and it's all sort of sound and fury signifying nothing, as Shakespeare said. And it's good to know that everything that you do, and the words that you speak, and the actions that you make, your take, are all like throwing a pebble in the water, and there are ripples that you can't even fathom how they're going to touch other people or affect other people. And I'm not saying that as an individual to say, like, look at me, I'm affecting loads of people, I'm really important. I don't mean that. I mean as everyone, every single person has those aspects to themselves, where they do things which affect everyone around them, and that kind of makes life worth living in a lot of ways. It's a profound thing. Anyway, this podcast has went on longer than I intended. I think I'll normally be shooting for about 20 minutes to half an hour. Maybe sometimes they'll go longer. I'm currently on my lunch break, so I'll better get back to work. But I just want to thank everyone who has actually listened to the end, because the first half of this podcast was really fairly dry stuff, with me just going through what's happening with the channel and what Patreon is and all that sort of stuff. So and then suffering the second half of me going in depth personally about some things. But that's the sort of stuff that's going to be in these podcasts. And also I'm going to be talking about writing techniques and a little bit more about how I write and what my daily routine with writing is and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I just want to thank all of you for listening, and as I said, this will be the next Horror Hideout number 1, because this is episode 0. Horror Hideout number 1 will be released to Patreon after this, and it will be a perk either for people who are donating $3 or more. Although I'm thinking, the more I'm thinking, I might make it a perk for everyone and try and come up with another perk for those levels. Anyway, we'll get there. We'll get there. That's my mantra in life. We'll get there. Whenever I think I'm falling behind on something, You'll get there, Michael. You'll get there. Just keep going forward. Keep moving forward. And that's all any of us can ever do. Anyway, yeah, please do check out the show notes below or the description in the video below, depending where you're watching this, for links to all of the different things that I'm doing at the moment and involved in, and all the Ghastly Tales goodness. And the next Ghastly Tales video will be a narration of an original story. Wow. Either that or a Ghost Story Society video, which is nearly done. So it'll be one of those, and then the other one will follow after that. I'm not making any sense. I'm going to go for now. I need to caffeine up. Yeah, caffeine up. Alright, everyone. I will see you on the other side. Bye for now.